I heard this growlish grunt. I was like, what in the world was that? I looked down and I looked back up and I seen it leaning in and out, and I was like, oh my God. I still have nightmares and think about it and stuff. Just looking at that thing, I had sheer fear over me. After I snagged that picture of this thing, my phone died. It just died out of nowhere, and sure enough, that thing just turned around and it went on up the ridge there. I mean, it was definitely a scary, eerie experience. I just sat there and just shocked in disbelief that I had actually, seen one. I think that thing wanted me to see it. So I went over and sat down. I just struck up conversation. Y'all ever seen or heard anything that's not supposed to be here? And they just got quiet. And they was like, what did you see? And I was like, this. And I showed them the picture and I showed them the tracks and I let them listen to the audio that I got. And they got real quiet and they just looked at each other and they said, that's a devil monkey. I said, so that's Bigfoot. And they said, mountain giant. It's all the same thing, just passed down from generation to generation. But they call them a devil monkey.
This is Bigfoot Crossroads. My name is Matt, and I am joined by Harley Owens. Harley emailed me with quite the story of an encounter, and unlike some people out there, which no fault of their own, but Harley actually had some photographs to kind of support his story. I found it really interesting. I'm glad to have him on. Harley, how you doing, man?
I'm doing extremely well, Matt. Yeah, I mean, if you'd have told me that 3 years after creature that I didn't take for a reality, and me now being out in the field researching for these things, I probably would have told you were crazy. But no, sure enough, here I am 3 years later after this live encounter, and I'm out here looking for them. So it's definitely had a big impact on my life. And, first thinking about it, I was kind of scared at first, but I'll save those details for talking about it. But it's definitely an interesting story, and there's been a lot of people supporting me from my encounter. It's really remarkable. I mean, because I know if I didn't collect evidence to have my back for what I mean, I would have been ridiculed like no other, but I still got that anyway. But, it's just human nature.
Yeah, that's just part of the ball game. I mean, if you are willing to put yourself out in the public eye with your story, there's going to be people that support it. There's going to be people that understand it because they've experienced similar things. And then there's going to be a whole slew of people that are just going to try to tear it apart just for the sake of tearing it apart.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's kind of baffling to me why people find so much joy and entertainment out of just doing that to others. But I mean, that's the way it is. I don't mind people asking questions. I ask questions.
Oh, absolutely.
But just to go after somebody and attack them just for the sake of attacking them, it's just kind of ridiculous, man. So,
oh yeah.
What made you take that leap of faith and finally publicly tell your story?
Well, because one of the big things for me was, if I'm going through what I was going through, being ridiculed by my friends and family, not really having any friends after my encounter because I was quote unquote crazy, or it's just a shadow, or those are bear tracks, or those are coyotes, or even elk. I had people tell me the recordings that I captured were elk. I knew instantly what I was looking at when I seen it. I knew it wasn't a bear. And I knew that if I was going through this, somebody else in this world has seen one of these creatures, have never talked about it.
Sure.
Because, I mean, that was me. I mean, I was just going to keep it sheltered up inside of me, and then I was like, well, I've got to tell it. I've got to tell it because, I mean, maybe about my encounter will lead to somebody else sharing theirs.
Well, let's get into it. For anybody that hasn't heard your story, if you don't mind, just kind of walk us through it from the beginning, what you experienced.
Oh, yeah, sir, absolutely. So this happened in September of 2020. I was working for an auction company at the time. I traveled around tearing out old sawmills and stuff, and we auctioned them off, all the equipment and the hand tools and all that stuff. And we were up there for 2 weeks. The week before, it was me and some other boys, and then the week after by myself, and that's when I actually had the encounter and such. But I remember the week before we got up there, and we met with the owner of the mill and stuff, and we talked with him, and he was telling us about this bear that was getting into the dumpsters, out and just destroying the place. And then I was like, yeah, is he a pretty good sized bear? And he's like, he's pretty good sized. And he said, but there's far worse things than him in these mountains. He said, yeah, there's snakes, coyotes, and all the other natural wildlife, but he said there's far worse things in these mountains than that. That's what really stuck with me, I was like, what's worse than that? And I mean, I instantly joked around in my mind like Black Panthers or something.
Right.
So going on through the rest of that week there, nothing really happened when me and the other guys were there. The auction was on a Saturday, and the boss came up to me. He said, well, can you stay up here next week? He said, I'm going to send these guys somewhere else to get another auction ready. I was like, yeah, I'll stay here. That next day, it was a Sunday. I went out there, and it was raining and stuff. I wasn't going to sit in a hotel all day. I was just going to go out there and sit, make sure nobody was coming in there and stealing stuff. But I got there, and I was just walking around the wood line there, and where it was raining, I could see a couple of tracks that I was like, man, them look human. And then I joked in my mind, that's Bigfoot. And not even, it's a Monday, nothing happened. It was Tuesday, nothing happened. Wednesday came around. There was a guy in there that morning, and I helped him load up a couple of things in the pallets and stuff that he got. And I was taking me a lunch break, and I went over to the service truck, and I grabbed my Coca-Cola and my sandwich, and sure enough, I heard this growlish grunt. I was like, what in the world was that? And I looked towards the wood line, nothing. And I looked up on the ridge, because where that sawmill was a flat, and there's a cliff, like in the valley where the cliff goes up. I seen a flash of black going across the cliff. I was like, well, that's a bear. I looked down and I looked back up, and I seen it leaning in and out, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not seeing this. I was like, that's a Bigfoot. These things are real. People aren't crazy. And the only thing that I knew of to do was to snap a picture, because I was like, as sure as I don't snag a picture of this thing, it's going to be gone, and I'll never have any proof to show that I seen what I seen. And I mean, I still have nightmares and think about it and stuff. I mean, it just looking at that thing, I had just pure fear over me. And after I snagged that picture of this thing, my phone, it was a brand new phone at the time. I believe it was an iPhone 8 Plus, and it just died. It had 70-something% battery, because I'd been keeping it on charge in a truck, and I got it, put it in a Kubota skid steer that I was in playing Bluetooth and stuff. And it just died out of nowhere. And I was sitting there still watching, staying close to the truck just in case I had to go, And sure enough, that thing just turned around and it went on up the ridge there. I mean, it was probably 100 yards away. I mean, it wasn't real close. I mean, I zoomed in as I could to get the picture, but it was definitely a eerie experience, because, I mean, that thing was leaning out and looking at me. I mean, it wasn't a bear. This thing was super intelligent. I mean, that thing was, I'd say it was easily over 7 foot. I mean, it was just to be as far away as it was and see how big. I mean, the really thing that stuck with me was the sheer width of it. I mean, that thing was 4x8 sheet of plywood. I mean, it was, it just turned around and it walked away. And then I just sat there and just shocked in disbelief that I had actually, seen one. And it traumatized me, and I was just like, nobody's ever going to believe me. When my phone came back, looked, and then sure enough, I had the picture, and I just sat there and looked at it, and I was like, that's amazing. Later on, that evening came, and that's when I started to get the vocalizations. Let me tell you, they will send chills down your spine.
What kind of vocalizations did you hear?
For long, drawn-out howls and whoops.
Could you tell if there was more than one?
At the time, I wasn't thinking about if there was more than one because of that, but I actually had audio sent off, and some people determined that there was more individual. And I had a spectrogram done of the audio, and these things made a vocalization all the way up to 2,000 hertz.
Wow. If you don't mind me asking, could you say who did the analysis on the audio for you?
Hensley, he done the spectrogram of the audio.
You're there by yourself. You're just there on a work trip. Now you've had your whole world rocked.
Yeah.
What kind of thoughts were you having after the fact? Like after the event's over and everything? Maybe on your way back home, how did you process it?
I went to the hotel and I just sat there and looked at the picture, and I just kept looking at it. I mean, and then I just kept thinking about it because, I mean, that thing, if it wanted to, it easily could have just came down there and grabbed me up, and I'd never been seen again. But if that creature didn't want me to know it was there, it would have made those noises. I mean, I think that thing wanted me to see it. It was letting me know that, hey, this is where I live. You know, you stay where you're at and you'll be cool.
I think it's interesting that nothing happened until after everybody left and you were there by yourself.
Well, and I mean, yeah, that's one thing that people have told me, you know, and I believe that these creatures can sense your intentions or whatnot. But I mean, yeah, me being there by myself, but it is fishy, and there's people who told me that. But I mean, I have no intentions on pulling anybody's leg or whatnot. You know, I mean, I was not a believer in this stuff. I mean, that was the last thing on my mind is, you know, Bigfoot being a reality.
So could you get any details from it being that far away, like what color the hair was, how long the hair was, the shape of the head, things like that?
It had like a cone-shaped head, and I actually thought that it was black, but I had somebody enhance the image, and the hair appeared to be reddish brown. I mean, I guess from the foliage and stuff, it could have looked black.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people who have had sightings where it appeared black and then was backdropped by like sunlight or something like that, and they could see kind of a reddish tint to the hair as it shined through the edges of the hair.
Right, yeah.
That's not uncommon at all. And I just want to clarify, whenever I mentioned that it waited until you were by yourself, for anyone listening, I wasn't calling into question whether it happened or not. It's just interesting that it waited until everybody was gone before it started becoming more active and let itself be seen like that. And I think that's very intentional.
Right. It wanted me to know. Yeah, it wanted me to know it was there. And I told one of the guys I worked with, I was like, do you remember hearing anything when we were out here? And he's like, I don't remember hearing nothing. I let him listen to the audio. He's like, no. He said, that's coyotes. And I was like, okay, whatever. And the next day, I walked around, and sure enough, that's when I found the trackway, and that thing, there was a trailway that led up to that ridge where I saw the creature, it came down into the sawmill on the flat down there. I mean, I'm 6'6", and I could do this between those tracks if I tried. I mean, they were huge. And I mean, I've got my boot to comparisons, and people were like, "Oh, well, why is all the leaves and stuff dead around there?" I'm like, "It's summertime, I mean, and you can see where that thing was stepped and it had slid, from coming across the creek. You can see the dried up creek bed, and it stepped and it slid coming across the creek, and it definitely crazy." And then I actually got the vocalizations from the first night, and then the next, even after I saw the next set of vocalizations, and they were 15 minutes apart. Now, 3 years later, me doing my field research and all that, it's definitely interesting.
How long did all that activity go on? Like, how many days were you there, and did the activity last the entire time until you left?
The week that we got up there, and then the week that I was there, it was 2 days. I mean, first I found the tracks in the rain. Mm-hmm. Monday, nothing happened. Tuesday, nothing happened. Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday was when I saw the creature, and then Wednesday evening was when the sound started. And then that Thursday, found the tracks, and then that evening I heard the other sets of vocalizations, and I was ready to go home. I just left. I just told it. I came up with a reason just to leave. I wasn't going to tell my boss I seen Bigfoot.
Yeah, he'd probably frown on that.
Well, there's one little detail I want to talk about, and the term that I will never forget. So Friday on my way home, I stopped at a little drive-in diner called Robo's. Went in there and I grabbed me something to eat, and so I went over and sat down. I just struck up conversation. I was like, "Y'all ever seen or heard anything that's not supposed to be here?" And they just got quiet, and they was like, "What did you see?" And I was like, "This." And I showed them the picture, and I showed them the tracks, and I let them listen to the audio that I got. And they got real quiet, and they just looked at each other, and they said, "That's a devil monkey."
A devil monkey.
I was like, yeah, and I was like, that's. I said, "So that's Bigfoot," and they said, "Mountain giant." It's all the same thing. They just passed down from generation to generation, but they call them a devil monkey.
So, what made you decide to get into research?
I knew one day, sooner or later, that I would have to overcome my fear. Because I'm an avid outdoorsman. I used to hunt, fish all the time. And after that encounter, I quit. I didn't go back. This past Thanksgiving was the first time that I had been deer hunting in 3 years. I actually killed a buck, and it was super emotional. And, I had conquered my fear. I got back and doing what I love. And, now that I've been doing my research and stuff, and it's helping me overcome my fear, because these things they're real, and I want to do things the community here in Tennessee. I mean, Scott Carpenter is actually who I looked up to in doing this. I looked up Bigfoot research in Tennessee, and lo and behold, Scott Carpenter's name pulled up, and I started watching his YouTube videos and all that. I've been going out and recording behind me as I walk down the trails. There's Bigfoot, sure enough, in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. People's going to discredit me, doing my field research or whatnot, and saying that's not there or that's just a blur or whatever. I mean, there's some images that I've got clearly see that there's that's nothing else but a Bigfoot. And I've actually had 2 more close encounters that I haven't talked about yet, and one of these encounters was pretty scary.
Was it like an aggressive encounter?
I think that they were more or less toying with me. I was hiking up the trail, and sure enough, I looked over to my left, and I'm going to go down through here and look. And I'm walking down this trail, and I keep walking, and there's a big flat. I kept hearing it moving over to my right, and I walked forward maybe 10 yards, and I turn and I look and I see this. I see it coming out from around a tree, and it just, oh wow! And it was a lot closer than my first encounter. I'm talking, this thing was like 30 yards away from me.
Oh man!
And it leaned out and went back behind a tree, and I had my backpack on my back, and I had my big knife. I didn't have a gun, and it was on my right hand side. So I turned, facing back towards the trail, and I'm making eye contact with it because it keeps peeping in and out. Then all of a sudden, to my left, there was a loud snap. There was one stomping. It was stomping its feet. I didn't turn around to look, but it was behind me, and it was just standing there, just stomping. And I booked it back to the main trail.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to get out of there in that situation. You're just going out there by yourself. Yeah,
yep. I'm doing it by myself. I have my back camera recording the whole time as I'm doing it. But sometimes I don't know if there's an electromagnetic field in here or what, but the phones just they zap. I mean, it's like they're just drained of energy. And I believe that there's an electromagnetic field in relationship with the Bigfoot. I mean, some people are going to say that they're an ape or whatnot. I personally believe that they are descendants of Nephilim. I'm not saying they are the Nephilim. I believe that they are descendants of them. My faith is a big part of my life, and it helped me a lot get through my encounter. I went through anxiety, depression. I wouldn't eat or sleep because of that encounter.
A lot of people that see them have that reaction.
Me telling and sharing my story, I just hope that somebody else coming out and telling theirs, because I mean, only way that the mystery is going to really be solved, coming forward and sharing their encounters. But I don't think that the mystery will ever be solved. But I could be wrong.
Do you think that, there's powers that be that are suppressing the discovery?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just for beliefs and all that stuff. I mean, I could be wrong, but, everybody is entitled to their own opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you ran across anything strange? Have you seen any unmarked vehicles or been approached by anybody or anything?
Yes. Yeah, I've actually had black vehicles outside of the house sometimes in the middle of the night.
And I mean, obviously, but just for clarification, that wasn't something you noticed happening prior to you doing this.
It never happened until I stood in my field research and posting everything on Facebook, on my Facebook group.
I mean, does that spook you a little bit to keep on going? You're talking about your YouTube channel, and I've seen that you've got the Facebook page going. You're doing some things. You're getting out there in the public eye. Do you have any apprehension about doing that because of what might happen?
If something's going to happen to me, I just hope that I have good enough friends to get going. I mean, I'm not scared. I mean, I want the truth to be revealed, and I'm going to reveal one way or another. I mean, people can think I'm crazy, but there's a connection. But is not a natural creature.
I've definitely heard some things over the years that have made me scratch my head in terms of maybe it's not a good idea to talk about this stuff publicly. But I just want to, point out that I do a podcast. I've been doing a podcast for a long time. Before that, I was a field researcher, and I have never had anything happen to me directly. I've known people that have been approached by some unsavory characters that wouldn't identify themselves.
I've had some unsavory phone calls. Very, very vulgar phone calls.
Really?
Yeah, restricted numbers, making threats to me and my family. Yeah.
What did they say?
There was one happened a couple weeks ago. They said they needed to stop posting what I'm posting, and they hung up. And then before that, you know, they called me my first encounter that happened in Virginia. They was like, "Did you see something?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I've got the evidence." They was like, "Well, just keep your mouth shut." And it's just been really weird. I've been getting these odd phone calls, the restricted numbers, you know, and it's really starting to scare me a little bit now, you know, that they've actually been outside the house. Brand new black unmarked Tahoes and such, you know, they're in our town, they're just Ford Explorers, you know, then they don't have any Tahoes or nothing like that in this town. Small town, you know, I mean, it's
I mean, that can definitely work to your advantage, though. Being in a small town like that, it's hard for people that don't belong there to go unnoticed, you know, without somebody seeing them and saying something.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And you know, you're in my opinion, your best defense against that sort of thing is just keep on doing what you're doing. Be public, be open, post your evidence, you know, be out there in the open where everybody's watching.
And absolutely, I've been doing it. Absolutely, yes. I've noticed that that the dog man was actually a reality. You know, I mean, I thought that was just a load of BS. I found some unexplained tracks. You know, I was going to try and cast them, but you know, the ground wasn't good enough. But sure enough, they were big 3-toed canine tracks with a 5-foot stripe each one. I mean,
jeez.
That really made me scratch my head. And I haven't publicly talked to another encounter, but I went into this gift area that I've been gifting in, you know, and I make with an H and an I out of sticks, and the Bigfoot they'll rearrange it, and they don't like Granny Smiths. I learned that.
Really?
They like red apples. They don't like green apples. They like red ones.
Huh.
And I was sitting there and I was putting an apple up in the tree. All of a sudden, something was running up the hill. I was like, "Oh gosh!" I was like, "I've got right here." And I went, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa!" I wasn't filming that. I don't know why, but I squatted down and I reached back and I turned the camera back and I turned around and I don't remember. I seen it behind. I was like, okay. And I thought it was a Bigfoot. I was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm a friend. But whenever I got home, I looked at it. Hey, it wasn't a Bigfoot. But the weird thing that happened was I got to my knees. I just had this overwhelming force, and I thought I was going to die because if I didn't have my inhaler on me, because at the time I had a really bad respiratory infection. I shouldn't have been out there. But now, if I hadn't had my inhaler, I would have died because it felt like my lungs were collapsing, and it was horrible. But as soon as I got home and I started looking through the footage and I seen this thing, and its head was peeking out of the brush, and it's definitely canine. Like, it's not ape or human like. I'll have to send it to you. It's an unexplained being. I mean, it literally looks like a wolf's head.
Wow. So you mentioned that, you know, you believe that Bigfoot are, you know, descendants of Nephilim. What do you think the dogmen are?
You know, I've been thinking about that too, but I really haven't come to a connection on that yet. I mean, I've been looking, you know, I think looking back into it some more. I mean, maybe they could fall in the category some way, somehow. I'm not really sure. It makes me scratch my head about them. But I can assure you that there are creatures that are in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and I just encourage any listener, you know, and you can check out my Facebook group, Bigfoot Reports and Data. I mean, I take credibility and accountability for what I capture. You know, I take comparison photos, you know, to show what's actually supposed to be there and what's not. You know, I mean, yeah, the conditions might be different, but you can still get a sense that, you know, that object's not there. Like one of these, I actually captured what I believe is a white juvenile, because I went into this other gifting area, and there's a stump not even 20 yards from where I gift at. And this thing, it was crouched down, but whenever I was videoing, it kind of props up and look, and it goes back down.
Huh.
I never imagined that I would be doing Bigfoot field research. And I mean, I'm already getting recognition, you know, and I've got some huge news coming. I actually got an offer to come attend a conference, but I can't say which one yet. And I mean, me being an amateur field researcher and already getting recognition, I'm really thankful and blessed. You know, I want to raise awareness. You know, these creatures are real, and you know, the forests are their home, and people need to respect their home.
Well, Harley, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. You mentioned your Facebook page. What was the name of it again?
It's Bigfoot Reports and Data, the and symbol, not and.
Just hang in there, man. You know, keep on doing what you're doing. That's awesome that you're getting some attention and recognition, and just keep it up, man.
Absolutely, Matt. And I can't thank you enough. And you had an encounter and you've been afraid to share it. Get it off your chest. Don't let it corrupt you, because you can help piece together the pieces, you know, to solving this mystery.
And if you've had your own encounter with something you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to all the social media, past episodes, a contact form to reach me directly, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.